Hello and welcome back to the Indian Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Raj Balkaran, and today we are going to learn more about Hanumān, this beloved deity figure character from the Valmiki Ramayana, from indeed all Ramayanas. Although there are hundreds and hundreds of versions of the Ramayana, there does not exist one without the presence of Hanumān as the archetypal devotee, as a loving servant of Rama and a great spiritual seeker himself. We learned a little bit about his training from his mother and his feminine power last time. Today we'll learn about Hanumān and an important encounter with the sun. I think I will read from the stories behind the poses, as is typical, and infuse the reading with some ad hoc insights. This story was actually told for Praṇāmāsana, right? The sort of namaste pose, if you will. That is the first pose in the sequence of poses comprising Sūrya Namaskāra, salutations to the sun salutations. This story actually explains the origin of Sūrya Namaskāra, among other things. So, Hanumān, of course, was a very special monkey indeed. As we learned last time in detail, he was conceived through a very special blessing from Lord Shiva himself. Right? His mother Anjana and father Kesari were childless for some time before Anjana undertook penance to Shiva in order to obtain a son. She had long been a devotee of the blue-throated Lord, chanting his mantras and meditating on his form for decades with sincerity of heart. So, Shiva decided to bless her with a very special son indeed. Shiva's seed was carried by the wind god Vayu to Anjana, and with it she conceived the great monkey hero Hanumān. From a very young age, Hanumān showed staggering feats of strength. As a young child, he could lift up his parents, and his spectacular strength only grew as he did. So one morning, the young Hanumān was hungry, and his mother Anjana was out at the market buying Hanumān's favorite fruit of all, mangoes. He looked out of his window and saw the rising sun, sort of orangey, reddish, golden in hue, and in his infancy, he mistook it for mango. So with a push off of his feet, he reached for the sun, and before he knew it, he was airborne. Hanumān traveled through the atmosphere to the heavens, intent on reaching the sun, Sūrya, the sun. But just as he was nearing it, Indra, the king of heaven, intervened, saying, "This is no mango, child. This is the sun himself, bringer of day. You cannot go further lest you perish by his flames." With this, the disappointed Hanumān returned to earth. But by this time, Anjana returned from the market with a fresh basket of mangoes to sate her son's hunger. Though he ate his fill of mangoes, he still thirsted. What he realized he was thirsting for was knowledge about the sun, who he had come so close to meeting. The sun's a fascinating symbol. Clearly, it's a fascinating phenomenon. Scientifically, physically, it's this glorious ball of fire, which is self-effulgent. It gives and gives and gives and doesn't take. Right? It's a very, very powerful symbol. Just so happens I have just come back from running a retreat in the outskirts of Toronto, where we were discussing both solar and lunar symbolism. We were actually talking about and practicing bringing into balance Ida and Pingala, or solar and lunar channels. And one of the disambiguations that was really important to our journey was looking at the sun as a symbol within material creation, within Prakriti. Solar's complement, if you will, is lunar, right? The sun is fiery, the moon is watery. The sun is associated with day, the moon with night. The sun is self-effulgent. The moon receives and reflects that light So they're complementary in many ways, and fascinating phenomenon. The sun is astronomically, it's much larger than the moon, but it's much further away than the moon. And strangely, their sizes more or less perfectly compensate for their distances, such that they appear approximately the same size to our gaze on Earth, right? They appear to be roughly the same size, which is why we have these brilliant phenomenon of eclipses, right, where they perfectly line up. Now, there is a sense of the sun being the antithesis of the moon, solar and lunar, these two channels, these two poles, these two pairs of opposites, if you will, within the realm of Prakriti or material creation. And that's one octave of the solar symbolism. However, on a higher octave, the sun represents, or can be said to represent, that which is beyond Prakriti itself, Purusha, or the soul or the spirit. The sun can be our solar aspect, perhaps our vitality, perhaps vigor, perhaps our self-reliance, perhaps our service to others. But the sun, in addition to these conditioned aspects of self within Prakriti, the sun can readily be said to express that which is beyond Prakriti. Purusha, Atman, the unconditioned, the witness of all. One of the most popular metaphors used in teachings and wisdom training is, panning from camera one. Camera one is the you, who you think you are with your name and your circumstance and your setting and your relationships, right? The camera one is often ensconced in various stimuli, right? Sometimes it's a horror show, sometimes it's a comedy, maybe sometimes it's a romance. This is the life that we're living. And camera two is sort of the bird's eye view, right? And if we're able to toggle between the two, then even when we're having an experience, we can create space whereby to respond to a situation rather than react instinctively. The vast majority of what we consider to be choices, decisions, these actions are not choices at all. In fact, these actions are more aptly described as reactions, the push and pull of Prakriti. For us to truly act, there needs to be space between the stimulus and the response. And that space is afforded by the power of witnessing, panning momentarily the camera too, to see what's going on with your manas, with your mind, with the machinations of mind. Camera two is where you'll find the soul signal. That's difficult to hear amid the noise of the machinations of mind. And so the sun can be said to represent the witness. The sun sees all. Indeed, the sun sees all things under the sun. So this is important for Hanumān because Hanumān is also a really profound symbol himself. As discussed in the last podcast, he is, what is he? On the one hand, he's a monkey, he's a primate, he's impulsive, at times even impetuous. He sets all of Lanka on fire with his tail. He's mischievous in a sense. But on the other hand, he's sagacious. He's wise. He's self-contained. There's a brilliant scene in the Valmiki Ramayana where Hanumān is searching for Sita in Lanka, and he finds himself in Ravana's harem. And he's just witnessing what's happening there. He's witnessing the women who are reminiscing about their time with Ravana, and they're all insatiable, it seems. And Ravana too represents, in a certain sense, unbound, unchecked desire, insatiable desire, multiple heads. Yes. But Hanumān seems to be relatively self-contained, self-possessed in this dynamic. And this is important because he makes for an excellent emblem of the human experience where we're animals through and through, and yet we have the capacity to raise our awareness, to raise our gaze, if you will, from the earthly to the heavenly, or at very least the horizon where heaven meets earth. And the horizon, the meeting of heaven and earth, is indeed precisely the plane of the human experience. We are terrestrial beings, we are animals, through and through, primates bar none. But we are also divine. There's also more to us than meets the eye, because there's more to creation than meets the eye. We're capable of art and poetry and profound reflection. We're capable of realization. We're even capable of waking up. So we are one part simian and one part sage, and Hanumān makes for an apt emblem encapsulation of the gamut of experiences comprising the human journey, the human condition. So back to this tale of Hanumān, he's young and he's salivating after the sun. This is a really cool metaphor, actually. It's not food he's looking for, at least not physical food. He's looking for spiritual nourishment. As Hanumān grew, he proved himself not only to be physically powerful, but also spiritually advanced. He was remarkably self-controlled, contained, content. He was happy to serve, and he loved learning. He's a lifelong learner indeed. While curiosity is natural for monkeys, compare, for example, Curious George, he was of a different order. His curiosity was of a different order altogether. He was curious about how the world worked. He was also curious about the mysteries of life, not just the seen, but the unseen, the adrishta, the motions and movements, the forces at play beyond the manifest, beyond the discernible, beyond the visible. He would seek out sages at every turn to learn about virtue, about wisdom, about compassion and truth, nonviolence, and such. There came a time when he learned all that he could from the elders of his clan, and still he wanted more. He even went online and learned at a great number of platforms. He studied at the Indian Wisdom School. You can study there too. He studied at all kinds of really rich online learning platforms. But he always kept in the back of his mind his childhood visit to the sun. He began to understand more clearly that it was not really a juicy mango for which he hungered, but really he was experiencing a thirst for knowledge, true knowledge, knowledge of truth, capital T, truth. So Hanumān now in his adult life, having studied far and wide, set out to seek the sun, to study with the sun. Can you imagine the source, the bringer of day, the witness of all things? Can you imagine such a one being your guru, your teacher, your preceptor, your mentor? Soaring through the heavens, Hanumān steered himself towards the sun. He soon drew near to the maker of day, effulgent, majestic, intense to behold. Sūrya, the sun god, was riding his chariot, of course, drawn by 7 celestial horses. Hanumān approached him and asked for instruction, for diksha, for initiation. This is not just mere knowledge expansion. Initiation is a rite whereby one is accepted as a pupil or apprentice, and one is taught not only information, but transformation, not just knowledge, but know-how. One is ritually initiated in this context and accepted as part of a lineage of knowledge. Sūrya, of course, refused. On what basis? Well, it wasn't quite Hanumān's candidacy, although it is vital that a wisdom teacher ascertain whether or not a student is adhikara, whether or not they are ripe. It's not a zero-sum game. Yeah, there are students who excel at various subjects. There are students who have various capacities, both intellectually and morally. And it is a question of what depth of knowledge is suited to which swabhava, which nature. Because the nature of the student will, in many ways, in addition to their effort, of course, dictate the extent to which they can receive the knowledge and the extent to which they can wield it or even perhaps teach it at some point if that is their calling. So it wasn't quite Hanuman's preparedness necessarily, although teachers have been known to test students in a variety of ways. Talk is cheap. Actions do speak louder than words, always, always, always. You don't judge a student by what they say. You judge a student by what they do, because they won't be able to hide their nature. It'll come out in their actions. So Hanumān approached the sun to ask for teachings. And the sun scoffed and said, "Look, I'm a very busy sun. I'm a very busy star. I've got to go. I've got to keep going. I can't stop to teach you. Are you kidding me? Minute by minute by minute, second by second by second, I create the passage of time on this realm. Day and night, dawn and dusk, all things are heralded by my motion, by my incessant and predictable motion across the heavens." See, this is why the sun is a powerful symbol, embodiment of dependability, something you can rely on. And, the clever monkey came up with a solution. "Glorious Sūrya, what if I keep pace with you so that you may teach me all the while? Will you accept me as a student then?" Sūrya scoffed and said to Hanumān, "You can try if you'd like, but the longer you keep pace, the more exposure you have to my fiery presence. You will be singed in no time." Hanumān responded, "If you'll have me as a student, I'll keep pace for as long as I can. For even a day of your instruction is worth a lifetime without it." Now, Sūrya thought, well, he's got grit, this one. He at least appears to in what he's saying. Well, let's take him on and see how long he lasts, thought Sūrya. So Hanumān positions himself face to face with the sun. This is the way the teachings have to come from one to the other, parampara, face to face. This dance is chest to chest, so to speak. Right? And Hanumān flew backwards at the exact same pace of the sun. It was as if they were both still at the same table. And so Sūrya's instruction began. Day in and day out, Sūrya taught Hanumān about all branches of Vedic knowledge. And beyond the various branches of Vedic knowledge, Sūrya taught Hanumān the very mysteries of life, of being. Imagine the sun sees all, witnesses all, supports all, outlives all. He is the great bringer of illumination, possessing his own luster, his own light. It was actually the sun and the moon who saw through the guise of the demon Rahu as he snuck into the assembly of the gods, guised in the garb of the gods, in order to steal some elixir. But thanks to the sun's light, they saw through the play of shadow. So imagine how powerful a teacher the sun would be, how dependable, how reliable, how knowledgeable. And so Hanumān kept pace day after day. A whole week went by, and Hanumān kept pace week after week. A whole month went by, and Hanumān kept pace month after month. A whole season went by, and still the dedicated monkey retained his speed, retained his focus, receiving teachings day in and day out. Sūrya, impressed at the monkey's forbearance, his intelligence, his respect, marched on with his teachings for exactly 1 year, one circle of the sky, one cycle of the sun. When they were done, Hanumān was wise, albeit blackened by the exposure to the sun. He offered his prostrations to Sūrya, Lord of Day. At the end of training, it's customary to offer your guru, your traditional spiritual teacher, a dakshina, a ritual fee. I mean, this might accord with their needs in traditional times. Such teachers did not take up livelihoods proper, and so their needs were met through alms, through donations in the community, through dakshina. So sometimes it might be something that your teacher might need. Of course, the sun has no need for nourishment nor housing and the like. Sometimes it might be a cash gift, right? Oftentimes, the teacher will indicate what the fee is. And more often than not, that has more to do with the prima facie reality than it has to do with the karma with that student, the karmic antecedents, and the degree of karmic debt remaining. They will, if they are among the wisest, they will request a ritual fee that will clear the karmic debt with the student. So there's not enmeshment across multiple lifetimes, if possible. That's not always possible. Okay. So at the end of their training, Sūrya asked Hanumān for a fee of his choosing, Hanuman's choosing, the student's choosing, because he knew the monkey would be both considered and wise. And there's nothing in particular that he required, and he is beyond karma, so there's no karmic enmeshment with Hanumān. Hanumān replied, having learned from you the mysteries of being, I don't just want to honor you as my guru for the rest of my days, but I want the whole world to honor you as well. I know you are worshipped around the world with prayers and hymns and the like, all across Bharata, across South Asia, across India, indeed across the world. Various cultures across the globe revere the sun, its power, its significance, its life-giving presence. But above and beyond these hymns and these rituals, I want to devise a special sequence of yoga postures dedicated to you. These postures not only activate one's solar energy within the body, but they will call the aspirant to reverence towards your glory, your prabha. And this sequence, of course, will be called Sūrya Namaskāra. So as your disciple, I wish to pay homage, namaskara to you. But I also want to call others to do the same, because in so doing so, it is not about your glory. It's part of it, of course. It is about their purification, the ability to surrender, to submit to something greater. It's about humility. So, of course, the very first of these postures will be the one I take up now, Praṇāmāsana, as I pay homage to you, my dear Guru, Lord Sun. Sūrya was pleased at this great gift, made in exchange for his year-long instruction. He blessed Hanumān with success with his solar sequence, known to us to this day as Sūrya Namaskāra. Right? It's a teeny bit of gloss from the stories behind the poses. Praṇāmāsana is the first step of Sūrya Namaskāra. It requires one to be centered, focused, and reverent. Whomever and whatever form our guru takes, I can assure you, I've been utterly nourished, even spoiled by having a great guru in my life for a number of years. I've had many teachers. They just come out of the woodwork wherever I go, very powerful spiritual teachers in India. But above and beyond that, you know that 9 times out of 10, the Uber driver, the barista, even the client you're coaching, adopts the voice of the divine and has something very important to teach, if only we have ears large enough to receive it. Perhaps this is why Ganesha has an elephant head and is also the Lord of Wisdom. Whomever and whatever form our guru takes, we are called to respect, to revere them if we are to succeed in receiving all they have to give. It's not the personage or the ego of the guru. This is more along the lines of narcissism. Yeah. It is what the Guru holds. It is that grace which flows through them, of which they are an instrument. It's reverence to the tradition of which they are a face, if not a faucet. Okay. This posture, Praṇāmāsana, naturally brings your attention to the heart center. So crucial for the mutual devotion flowing between teacher and student. The Sūrya Namaskāra sequence also calls us to lower our heads and subdue our egos so that there is space to receive the grace our Guru will give. As mentioned at the outset, that grace will flow in kind with respect to your temperament, your sort of spiritual qualification, your intellectual qualification, and the space you hold. It's a sacred space, but it takes both teacher and student for that sacred space to ensue. Sūrya Namaskāra is far more than a healing practice geared towards the cultivation of the soul or channel. It is a sequence that balances both channels when done well. The sun is the light of awareness, representative of the light of the soul. And so as you're doing this Praṇāmāsana, or at least ideating upon it as you hear these words, perhaps this is a great opportunity to connect with that. What? That. What? That which is greater than you are. Sat Chit Ananda Atman Purusha. The secret fire. The force. The divine presence. However you name it. However you conceive of it. That oceanic expanse. From whence we came, into which we will return. No doubt someday. Until next time, keep well, keep listening. And perhaps read more tales of Hanumān. Both about his monkeying around and about his exalted, profound wisdom and devotion. Namaste for now.